Before you question everything, think about what you survived in silence, because not everyone was meant to make it through that. You didn't just go through something random. You were being tested. And the strange part is, no one explained it to you. No warning, no instructions, no clarity, just pressure, just confusion, just moments that made you feel like you were losing yourself. But look at you now, still here, still breathing, still searching. That alone says something. Because this wasn't a test designed for the average person. This was selective, carefully placed, specifically timed. And yes, it was meant for you. Not because you're unlucky, not because life wanted to break you, but because there's something in you that had to be proven. You see, most people would have walked away. They would have given up when things stopped making sense. They would have chosen comfort over growth. They would have numbed themselves just to escape the pressure. But you didn't, even when you wanted to. Even when it got heavy. Even when it got heavy. Even when nothing around you was working. You stayed. And that's where the test began. It didn't look like a test. It looked like delay. It felt like rejection. It sounded like silence. Doors didn't open. People didn't show up. Things didn't align. And you started asking questions. Why me? Why is this happening? Why does it feel like everything is against me? But what you didn't realize was that everything was actually aligning, just not in a way your mind could understand yet. Because this test was never about what you could see. It was about what you would do when you couldn't see anything at all, when nothing made sense, when guidance felt distant, when the path disappeared. Would you still move forward? Would you still believe? Would you still hold on to something even when there was nothing to hold on to? That's where most people fail. They need proof. They need reassurance. They need signs. And when those things disappear, they collapse. But you kept going, not perfectly, not without doubt, not without moments where you almost gave up, but something inside you refused to completely shut down. Even in your lowest moments, there was a quiet voice, a whisper, barely noticeable, but it kept saying, keep going. And you listened, not loudly, not confidently, but just enough to take one more step, and then another, and another. That's how you passed, not with strength, but with persistence, not with clarity, but with endurance. This test wasn't about being fearless. It was about moving while afraid. It wasn't about having answers. It was about trusting without them. And that's rare, extremely rare, because this world conditions people to rely on what they can see. But you were placed in a situation where you had to rely on what you feel. And feelings can be confusing, unstable, unpredictable. But your spirit knew something your mind didn't. It knew this was temporary. It knew this was shaping you. It knew this had purpose. Even when everything looked like it was falling apart. You see, this hidden test was about separation, not from people, but from versions of yourself. Old habits, old thinking, old attachments, things you didn't even realize were holding you back. And the only way to remove them was to put you in a situation where they could no longer survive. That's why it felt uncomfortable. That's why it felt unfamiliar. Because you were being pulled out of what was known into what was necessary. And necessary doesn't always feel good. Sometimes it feels like loss. Sometimes it feels like isolation. Sometimes it feels like you're being left behind. But you weren't being left behind. You were being repositioned. Quietly, carefully, strategically. While others were moving fast, you were being slowed down. While others were celebrating, you were being stowed down. While others were celebrating, you were being tested. And it felt unfair. You saw people getting things easier. You saw paths opening for others. You saw progress around you while you felt stuck. But what you didn't see was what they weren't being prepared for. Because not everyone is meant to carry what you're about to carry. Not everyone is built for the next level you're being shaped for. And that's why your process looked different. Longer, harder, more intense. Because your capacity is different. Your purpose is different. And deep down, you always felt that. Even before all of this started, there was always something about you that felt separate. Not better, not above, just different. Like you didn't fully belong in certain spaces. Like you couldn't fully connect with certain mindsets. Like you saw things others didn't notice. And you tried to ignore it. You tried to fit in. You tried to blend. But it never worked completely, because you were never meant to be like everyone else. And this test, this hidden, silent, confusing test, was the confirmation. It stripped away everything fake, everything forced, everything that didn't align. And what was left was you, the real you, not the version shaped by expectations, not the version influenced by fear, but the version that exists beneath all of that. Stronger, clearer, more aware, and yes, a little tired, because growth like this isn't easy. It costs energy, it costs comfort, it costs familiarity, but it gives something in return, something most people never gain. Clarity of self, inner strength, unshakable awareness. You now see things differently, you feel things differently, you respond differently. Things that used to affect you don't hit the same anymore. People who once had influence over you no longer do. Situations that once confused you now make sense. And that's not coincidence, that's transformation. That's what happens when you pass a test that wasn't meant for everyone. You evolve, quietly, deeply, permanently. And the most powerful part? You didn't even realize you were changing while it was happening. It was subtle, gradual, layer by layer, until one day you looked back and realized you're not the same person anymore. And you never will be again, because once you pass something like this, there's no going back, only forward, only upward, only deeper into who you're becoming. And now things will start shifting, not all at once, but noticeably. Opportunities will feel different. Connections will feel more aligned. Your intuition will get stronger. Your decisions will become clearer because you've earned it. Not through luck, not through shortcuts, but through endurance. Through staying when it was hard. Through believing when it was unclear. Through moving when it felt impossible. And that's why this matters. Because this wasn't just a phase. This wasn't just a rough period. This was preparation. Preparation for something bigger, something more aligned, something that requires the version of you that just emerged from this test. So if you're wondering why it all happened, this is why. To reveal you, to refine you, to prepare you. And now that you've passed, everything changes, not overnight, but inevitably, because once you reach this level, life doesn't respond to you the same way anymore, and neither do you. You're not reacting like before. You're not chasing like before. You're not settling like before. You've seen too much, felt too much, grown too much, and there's no shrinking back from that. So take a moment, breathe, let it sink in. You made it through something that most people would never understand, and you did it quietly, without applause, without recognition, without anyone fully knowing what it took. But it counts, it matters. And it changed you. Forever. Right here, pause for a second. If this is hitting something deep in you, drop a "I made it" in the comments. Not for anyone else, but for yourself. And if you've been feeling this shift quietly, you might want to stay connected here, because what you came out of was never meant to be temporary. It rewired you. It shifted how you think, how you feel, how you see people. You don't attach the same anymore. You don't react the same anymore. You don't chase things that once felt important. And that's not you losing yourself, that's you finally finding yourself. There's a calm in you now. Not because life is perfect, but because you've already faced chaos and survived it. So the little things don't shake you like before. The opinions don't cut as deep. The noise doesn't control you. Because you've heard something louder, your own inner knowing. And once you hear that, everything else becomes background. But here's what most people don't understand. Passing the test doesn't mean everything suddenly becomes easy. No, it means you're now ready for a different level. a higher level. A level where things require more awareness, more discipline, more alignment. Because now, you're not being tested on survival anymore. You're being tested on who you choose to become after survival. Will you go back to old patterns? Will you reconnect with things that once drained you? Will you shrink yourself just to feel comfortable again? Or will you step fully into this new version of you, even if it feels unfamiliar, even if it feels lonely at times, even if it requires you to walk a path that not many understand? That's the next phase, and it's quieter, less chaotic, but more intentional, because now, you can't pretend anymore. You can't ikund anymore. You can't ignore your intuition anymore. You can't act like you don't see the signs. You've been through too much for that. You felt too deeply for that. You awakened too much for that. So now, every decision matters more. Every connection matters more. Every connection matters more. Every step carries weight. And that might feel intense, but it's also powerful. Because you're no longer moving blindly. You're moving with awareness, with intention, with clarity, even if it's still unfolding. And yes, there will be moments where you miss the old version of yourself. The one who didn't overthink, the one who didn't feel so deeply, the one who didn't question everything. But that version of you wouldn't be able to handle where you're going. That version was necessary for where you were, but not for where you're headed. And that's why the test had to happen, to upgrade you, to stretch you, to prepare you for something that requires a stronger mind, a deeper heart, and a clearer vision. So don't doubt the process now. Don't question your growth now. Don't shrink yourself now. Because everything you went through was building this version of you. The one who sees through illusions. The one who doesn't settle for surface level. The one who values peace over chaos. The one who chooses alignment over approval. That's who you are now. And that's who you need to be for what's coming next. Because something is coming. Not in a dramatic, overwhelming way, but in a quiet, undeniable shift. Things will start to click. Not all at once, but enough for you to notice. The right people will feel different. The right opportunities will feel aligned. The right paths will feel natural. And for the first time, you won't feel like you're forcing anything. You'll just be flowing, moving, responding, trusting. And that trust, that's the real reward. Because during the test, trust was the hardest thing to hold on to. Everything around you challenged it. Everything made you question it. But you held on. Even if it was barely. Even if it was shaky. Even if it was quiet. And now, that trust becomes your foundation. Your guide. Your protection. Because when you trust yourself, you stop looking outside for validation. You stop waiting for permission. You stop second-guessing every move. You just know. And that knowing is what separates you now. That's what makes you different. That's what confirms you really did pass. Because the test was never about the situation. It was about the shift within you. And that shift is permanent. So as you move forward, remember this. You are not who you used to be. You cannot go back to thinking the same. You cannot go back to accepting less. You cannot go back to ignoring what you feel. That chapter is closed. And even if you tried to reopen it, it wouldn't feel right anymore. Because you've outgrown it completely. And growth like this, it demands change. It demands alignment. It demands truth. Even when it's uncomfortable. Even when it's uncomfortable. Even when it's inconvenient. Even when it requires you to walk alone for a while. But that solitude, it won't last forever. It's just another part of the transition, another layer of preparation, another moment where you're being positioned for something greater. So don't rush it. Don't force connections. Don't settle just to fill space. Because what's meant for you now will match who you've become, not who you used to be. And that's important. Because you didn't go through all of this just to return to what broke you. You went through this to rise above it, to move beyond it, to step into something higher. And that's exactly what you're doing right now, even if it doesn't fully feel like it yet, Even if you're still figuring things out, even if you're still adjusting, it's happening. Slowly, surely, powerfully. And one day you'll look back at this moment and realize this was the turning point. This was the shift. This was the moment everything began to change. Not on the outside first, but on the inside, where it matters most, where everything truly begins. And you'll understand why it had to be this way, why it had to be hard, why it had to be hidden, why it had to be hidden, why it had to test you in ways no one else could see. Because if it didn't, you wouldn't be who you are now. And who you are now is exactly who you need to be for what's next. Because what's next isn't going to announce itself loudly. It won't come with clear signs. It won't come with guarantees. It won't come with someone explaining it to you step by step. It will come quietly, subtly, almost in a way that feels ordinary, but you'll feel it. That familiar pull, that inner nudge, that unexplainable knowing that something is shifting again. And this time, you won't panic. You won't question yourself the same way. You won't feel as lost as before, because now you recognize the pattern. You've been here before, not in the same situation, but in the same feeling, the unknown, the in-between, the space where nothing is fully clear yet, but everything is slowly rearranging. And instead of resisting it, you'll move with it. That's the difference now. Before, you fought the process. You tried to control it. You tried to understand everything. You tried to make it make sense too soon. But now, you allow, you observe, you trust. Even when it's uncomfortable, even when it stretches you, even when it asks you to let go of things you once thought you needed. Because you've learned something powerful. Not everything that feels important is meant to stay. Some things are only meant to prepare you. Some people are only meant to teach you. Some situations are only meant to reveal you. And once their purpose is fulfilled, they fade. Not as a punishment, but as a progression. And this is where many people get stuck. They hold on too long. They try to revive what has already ended. They try to force what no longer fits. And in doing that, they block what's trying to enter. But you're starting to see that now. You're starting to feel when something is complete. You're starting to recognize when it's time to move forward, even if it's hard, even if it's emotional, even if a part of you wants to stay in what's familiar. Because growth will always ask you to release something, always. And now you understand that release isn't loss, it's alignment. It's making space, it's creating room for something that matches your new level. And that new level, it's not just about what you attract, it's about what you tolerate, what you accept, what you allow into your energy. Because after everything you've been through, you can't afford to entertain things that pull you backwards. You feel it faster now. The misalignment, the discomfort, the subtle red flags. And instead of ignoring them, you listen. That's growth. That's awareness. That's what happens when you pass a test that sharpens your intuition. You stop doubting what you feel. You stop explaining away what doesn't feel right. You stop forcing yourself into spaces that don't match your energy. And because of that, your circle changes. Your environment changes. Your priorities change. And yes, sometimes that means things get quieter. Sometimes that means fewer people. Fewer distractions, fewer empty conversations. But what remains is real. What remains is aligned. What remains is aligned. What remains is meant for you at this stage. And that's worth more than anything temporary. Because you're no longer looking for quantity, you're looking for depth, for meaning, for connection that doesn't drain you, but strengthens you. And that shift, it didn't come easy. It came through experience, through disappointment, through moments where you had to learn the hard way. But now you carry that wisdom with you, quietly, powerfully, and it guides you, not loudly, not forcefully, but consistently. And as you continue forward, you'll notice something else. You're no longer chasing validation. You're no longer seeking approval. You're no longer trying to prove yourself to people who don't understand you. Because you've realized you don't need to be understood by everyone. You just need to be aligned with yourself. And that alignment, it brings a different kind of peace. Not the kind that comes from everything being perfect, but the kind that comes from knowing you're no longer betraying yourself. You're no longer ignoring your truth. You're no longer shrinking to fit spaces that were never meant for you. And that's freedom. Real freedom. The kind most people never reach because it requires letting go. It requires facing yourself. It requires choosing growth over comfort again and again. And you've done that, even when it was hard. Even when it felt like you were walking alone. Even when it seemed like no one else understood what you were going through. You kept choosing growth. And that choice, that's what separated you. That's what set you apart. That's what confirmed you were never meant to stay where you started. You were meant to evolve, to rise, to become something more. And now you're stepping into that, fully. Not perfectly, but intentionally. And that's all that matters. Because perfection was never the goal. Alignment was, growth was, transformation was, and you've achieved that. Not in a loud, obvious way, but in a deep, undeniable way. The kind that can't be faked. The kind that can't be rushed. The kind that only comes from going through something that changes you at your core. And now, as everything continues to unfold, you'll start to see why. Why it had to happen the way it did. Why it had to be hidden. Why it had to be difficult. Because if it wasn't, you wouldn't have reached this level of awareness. You wouldn't have developed this strength. You wouldn't have gained this clarity. And without those things, you wouldn't be ready for what's coming next. But now you are. Even if you don't fully realize it yet, even if a part of you still feels unsure, even if there are still questions, you're ready. Because readiness isn't about having everything figured out. It's about being willing to move forward even when you don't. And that's exactly where you are. Moving, growing, becoming. And there's no stopping that now. Because once you pass a test like this, life doesn't slow down for you. It opens up in ways you never expected, in ways you couldn't have planned, in ways that match the version of you that just emerged. So trust it. Trust yourself. Trust the process that brought you here. Because it didn't bring you this far just to leave you in uncertainty. It brought you here to show you who you are. And now that you've seen it, there's no going back. Only forward, only deeper, only higher into everything you were always meant to become. Because something inside you has awakened, and it won't go quiet again. You can try to distract yourself. You can try to ignore it. You can try to go back to how things used to be. But it won't feel right. It won't sit the same. It won't satisfy you like it once did. Because you've crossed a line internally. A line most people never even realize exists. And once you cross it, your standards change, your awareness expands, your tolerance for anything misaligned disappears. That's why certain things now feel heavy. Not because they are bad, but because they no longer match you. And this is where your power truly begins. Not in what you gain, but in what you refuse. What you walk away from. What you no longer entertain. What you choose not to carry anymore. Because every time you say no to what drains you, you say yes to what elevates you. And that shift, it changes everything. You start moving differently, speaking differently, even thinking differently. There's more intention now, more presence, more awareness behind every decision, and people will notice. Some will feel inspired by it. Some will feel uncomfortable around it. Some won't understand it at all. And that's okay, because this path was never meant to be understood by everyone. Remember that. This journey was always selective. That's why it felt isolating at times. That's why it felt like you were being pulled away from certain people, places, and patterns. Not to punish you, but to protect your evolution. Because not everyone can go with you. Not everyone is meant to understand this version of you. And forcing them to only slows you down. So you release, with peace, not anger, not resentment, just understanding. Understanding that everyone is on their own path, and yours just happens to require a different level of awareness, a different level of discipline, a different level of truth. And truth, that's something you can't unsee anymore. You see through masks now. You sense intentions now. You feel energy before words are even spoken. And while that might feel overwhelming at times, it's actually your advantage. It protects you, it guides you, it keeps you aligned. Because now, you're not just living on the surface, you're living with depth. And depth changes everything. Surface-level things don't excite you anymore. Superficial connections don't fulfill you anymore. Empty conversations don't hold your attention anymore. You crave something real, something meaningful, something that resonates with who you've become. And that craving, it's not random, it's a reflection of your growth. Because when you elevate internally, your external world has to adjust. It has to rise with you or fall away from you. There's no in-between. And that's why things might still feel like they're shifting. Because they are. Still, quietly, constantly, aligning with your new level. So if something feels like it's leaving, let it. If something feels like it's changing, allow it. If something no longer feels right, trust that feeling. Because your intuition now is sharper than ever. It's been refined through everything you've been through. Every challenge, every moment of confusion, every time you had to rely on yourself when nothing else made sense. All of that built this inner guidance system. And now it's leading you, step by step, moment by moment, towards something greater, something more aligned, something that matches your energy now. Not your past, not your old self, but who you are today and who you are becoming. Because this journey, it doesn't end here. Passing the test wasn't the destination. It was the beginning of a new chapter, a new level, a new version of your life that operates on a completely different frequency. And in this new space, you don't chase, you attract, you don't force, you align. You don't settle, you choose. And those choices, they shape everything. They determine your direction. They define your environment. They influence what enters your life next. So choose carefully, not out of fear, but out of awareness. Because now you know better, and when you know better, you move better. That's the responsibility of growth. That's the weight of awareness. But it's also the gift, because not everyone gets here. Not everyone reaches this level of clarity. Not everyone passes the test you just passed. And that's not something to take lightly. It's something to honor, to respect, to protect. Because this version of you, it took a lot to build. A lot of patience, a lot of endurance, a lot of silent battles that no one else saw. But you did. You lived it, you felt it, you overcame it, and now you carry that strength with you. Not loudly, not for attention, but quietly, confidently, unshakably. And that's what makes you different now. That's what sets you apart. That's what confirms you're always meant for something more. Not in an ego-driven way, but in a purpose-driven way. A way that requires you to stay aligned, to stay aware, to stay true to everything you've learned. Because the moment you forget, the moment you start ignoring your growth, you'll feel it immediately. That discomfort, that inner tension, that quiet knowing that something isn't right. And that's your signal, your reminder to return to yourself, to realign, to reconnect with who you've become. Because this journey, it's not about being perfect. It's about being conscious, present, intentional. And as long as you stay in that space, you'll continue to evolve. You'll continue to rise. You'll continue to step into everything that was always meant for you. And one day, you won't even recognize the person you used to be. Not because you've forgotten them, but because you've outgrown them completely. And when that moment comes, you'll understand something deeply. None of it was random. None of it was wasted. None of it was meant to break you. It was all meant to build you into this, into who you are now, into who you're becoming next. And that journey, it's only just getting started. Because what you've stepped into now is a life that responds to who you are becoming, not who you used to be. And that changes everything. The way doors open, the way people approach you, the way opportunities appear. It won't feel forced anymore. It won't feel like you're chasing. It will feel aligned, natural, timed in a way you can't explain. And you'll pause sometimes, not out of confusion, but out of realization. Realization of how far you've come, of how much you've changed, of how everything that once felt like it was falling apart was actually coming together, in a way only your soul could understand. And there will be moments, quiet ones, where you sit with yourself and you feel it, that deep sense of knowing, that calm confidence, that inner peace that doesn't need validation. And in those moments you won't need answers, you won't need reassurance, you won't need to figure everything out, because you'll finally understand you were never lost. You were being guided. Every delay, every redirection, every closed door, every silent season, it was all leading you here, to this version of yourself, the one who no longer begs for clarity because they trust the process, the one who no longer fears the unknown because they've survived it, the one who no longer looks outside for direction because they've found it within. And that's the real transformation. Not what changed around you, but what changed inside you. Because once that shifts, everything else has no choice but to follow. So as you move forward from here, walk differently, not with pressure, not with fear, but with awareness, with intention, with quiet confidence, knowing that you don't have to rush anything. What's meant for you will meet you at your level, and your only job is to stay aligned with who you've become. Protect your energy, honor your growth, trust your timing, and most importantly, never forget what it took to get here. Because you didn't just pass a test, you became someone new in the process, someone stronger, someone wiser, someone more in tune with truth. And that version of you is exactly who this next chapter requires. So don't look back with doubt. Don't question if you're ready. Don't shrink yourself to fit old spaces, because the path ahead, it's not meant for who you were. It's meant for who you are now. And everything about you, every lesson, every scar, every moment of endurance, has prepared you perfectly for it. So keep going. Not because you have something to prove, but because you finally understand who you are. And once you understand that, nothing can stop what's meant to unfold next. Nothing can block what's already aligned. Nothing can take away what you've built within yourself. This is your confirmation, your quiet validation, your moment of truth. You passed, not loudly, not publicly, but deeply, completely, and permanently. So step forward now with that knowing, because the hidden test is over, and the life it was preparing you for has already begun. If this message spoke to you, then you already know. This isn't just content, this is confirmation. Subscribe and keep walking this path with me, because this is only the beginning.